All right, part 2 of scraping data from Finra and then building our screeners. First, we're always going to do our imports, requests, just scrapes from the web. Date time just is a Python way of working with date and time. And OS writes to our system. So you'll run those. These are just some string variables that we're going to need to pull this data. So with this data, you have the consolidated files that Finra built that started in August of 2018. So here's what those files look like. Here's what the consolidated files look like. Date, symbol, short volume, short exempt volume, total volume, market. Market we're not concerned with. We're going to drop that eventually. Short exempt we do not use. I confirm that it's not used by Squeeze Metrics and others. So we'll drop that. Yeah, the older files did not have market on them, and the reason is because it wasn't a consolidated file. You knew what the market was based on the file name. But other than that, the older files look very much the same as this. Short exempt was a newer thing too that came in later. Yeah, so the files NYSE and NASDAQ start in the first trading day of 2010, and we only need to download up until August 1st when the consolidated starts, and we're just going to use consolidated from then. Prior to August 18, 2018, we're going to combine the NASDAQ and NYSE to make our own consolidated files, and then we're just going to use consolidated files to build our data frame. So these are the URLs for the consolidated NASDAQ NYSE. This block of code is your NASDAQ pull for pulling from NASDAQ. This one pulls from NYSE. This one pulls from consolidated. So start date, like I said, we need to start sometime before 2010. If it doesn't see a file, it will not write. And that is if it's right here. If it doesn't see a good request status code from Finra, it will not write anything. So if it does not get a good status, it will. So if a good status, it will write your file. If not, it will not. It'll just loop back to the beginning, try the next date. I guess explaining this code, we just have a start date and an end date variable, and we're going to start, our loop starts at this start date and ends at this end date, increments by 1 day using this date time delta. And our file path, yeah, like I said, make sure you set the correct file path for your system, so yours will look different than this. Yeah, so just in your My Documents, just make a folder. You can call it something different if you want, but just make sure you rename it in this file path. Might not be a bad idea to keep the actual file. This is your actual file name. The first part of it may not be a bad idea to actually keep that the same, just so the next code works. Just a while loop. While the start date is less than the end date, it's going to increment each time. The new date is going to convert to the correct format. Yeah, so the format is the exact same as Finra's format. So this string format will, using string format time, which is a date time method, it'll format the same. Current URL is going to be the FNSQ URL plus the new date that we're going to change every single time, increment by 1. end.text at the end. It'll print the current URL, so you know where you're at in the loop, and then it's going to run the requests, and with that URL, see if it's good. If it is good, it's going to write it to file. If not, it's going to go back to the top of the loop, increment 1, continue going. Fairly simple. And yeah, NYSE is the same, except we're just changing the front file path. Yeah, that's all that really changes. Start and end date's basically the same. Consolidated, the same, except we changed the file path again, and we're going to start later, and we're going to go to today.today, datime.date.today. So we get the latest files. Again, it's going to check to make sure there's a good file there. If it's not, it's just going to loop back. And also there's a check in there for, is the file already created? Have you already written this file? If it did, we don't need to write it again. And it's just going to loop back to the beginning and continue to loop. Fairly simple. Up to this point, I had no problems with the code. Later on, I ran into some issues, but we're not to the point where I had issues yet. Like I said, I don't know if I said this in the beginning, but Python is not my strong suit. I've been learning Python, trying to get better at Python. If you notice ways I could have done this better, absolutely let me know. It will not bother me. Yeah, I don't get easily offended or anything like that, so if there's some way I could have done this better, definitely let me know that. We'll get to the next video where we're going to make the consolidated files.